Hi, today we're going to be working to make this ski resort map. There is a lot to learn this week. We're going to be learning about how to use symbols, brushes, make our own brushes, custom brushes. So I am doing a step-by-step. If you would like to use the book, that's fine, or you can follow along with me. So we're going to be making this map right here. And you can see it's almost like they just started with a basic idea, and we're going to make it beautiful. So the book does have you starting with this right here, and then you just make it look like the one on the first page. So let's get going.
For this project, you are going to need the type files that were included with the Against the Clock. So you need to download this ATC Reader Fonts zip, and I'm going to show you how to unzip them in PC. For Mac people, you're going to have to look it up because that is a different situation, and I don't have one to show you. So I have downloaded it. It's right here. It's zipped. I'm going to unzip it. And we're going to go to each of these, highlight all of them. I'm just selecting with my mouse, right-click and say Install. And I've already installed it here on my computer, so it's asking me, do I want to replace it? No. So that is how you're going to load those fonts onto your computer. You will need them for this week.
So in the files you downloaded from the book, we are going to be using the one called Skiing. So unzip that. And then there are two different files. We need the one called Summit Map. So you can either double click it and it should open up in Illustrator, or you can be in Illustrator and say File Open, and you will see something like this. So first off, let's make sure that we are all in the same workspace, Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic. I'm going to reset mine to make sure it's back. Okay, so this is the base of our ski map. The first thing we need to do is look at our swatches. So since we're all in Essentials Classic, your swatches will be right here, and you can just click and they will open. If you don't see them there, you just need to go to Window, Swatches, and it'll open it. And make sure that we can see all of it, just kind of pull it down a little bit. Now, it may look different on your computer, and that's just the list view or the icon view. I like the icon view, but it's up to you. Okay, so we're going to go right up here to the hamburger menu and say select all unused. So it's saying all of these things are not used in this particular design. And we're now just going to click the little trash can, and yes, we need to delete all of those. Now we need to go into the list view, which is this one right here. You might have to pull this down a little bit. And this is just showing you a different way that you can throw things away. We also need to throw away this grays. So if you pick it up and drag it down to where that is, where the trash can is, and then let go, it's going to get rid of that. So now we only have the things that we're going to be using for this. So now we need to use our gradient panel. Now the gradient panel is already here, but unfortunately it's kind of in a bad place because we need it open at the same time as swatches. So what we're going to do is pick it up, grab it by the word gradient. And of course, if you don't find it right here, just go to Window, Gradient. I'm just going to pick this up and move it over to the side a little bit because I need for this to be open at the same time as swatches. And when we're done, we can just pick it up and drag it back down here. Okay, so these are the different types of gradient. You can make one that's linear, or one that goes out from the middle like a gradient, and then one that is just all over the place. You can do a bunch of stuff with it. We're going to click on the radial one, and now we need to tell it what do we want the gradient to. Right now it starts at white and it goes to black. So we need to deal with the first one, so click on the first color, which would be white. And we're going to pick up this one over here that says C7M4. Just pick up that swatch and drag it and drop it on the first little thing. And it might not look like it changed because they're very similar. For this one, we're going to click on it, and then we're going to grab the one that's 361100, and we're going to drag it right there. So now we have a different gradient that are two different colors. And we're going to add another color to it. This one we're just going to kind of put in the middle. So just kind of drag it and drop it in the middle. So now we have three colors. Oh, that was the one that's 22-1. We're going to put that one there. But we need to tell it exactly where it is. So the book wants us to put it at 67. So down here, I dropped mine at 46. You might have dropped yours somewhere else. We're going to say we want it to be exactly 67 and just hit enter. So now we have that gradient kind of the way the book wants. So let's keep going. We're going to grab that 36 one again and put it between the first two and drop it. That needs to be at 33%. Not a 4-color gradient. So that's pretty good, but we need to make just a few more changes. Double click on this one that we just added at 33%. And this little color thing pops open. And we need to make this at 70%. So it's a little bit opaque right there. So we're good with that one. Now make sure your swatches is open. And we're going to grab this little part right here. Just click and drag and drop it over here into, we have made a new gradient swatch. And we're going to just double click right there on the name and call that Ice Radial. Now with this still up, we're going to take that same gradient we just made, but we're going to make it linear. So it changed it a little bit. And we're going to pick that one up and drag it here. We're going to call that Ice Linear. And you can, well, let me see. I'm going to make these bigger so you can see that they actually do look different. Both in here, yeah, well, you can't tell, but they're a little bit different. Back to big, large this. Yeah, you can definitely tell that they're different there. So we've made 2 gradients. So we can go ahead and pick up the gradient panel and drag it back down here to the bottom just so we've got it when we need it later. Now with the selection tool, we're going to click on the, what is that, a lake? And we're going to click once on Ice Radial to add that to the lake. You could also do it up here. So we could have just chosen Ice Radial right there. And let's, by the way, we have not saved. Well, let's go ahead and save. So File, Save As, and we're going to put it in our Work in Progress folder like we did last time. And let's call it last name, Illustrator 3. Okay, so now whenever we hit Control S for save, it is going to save it there. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but we need to change it a little bit. So we're going to get the gradient tool. The gradient tool. If you're in the Essentials Classic panel, it should be right here. Remember that if you can't find it, you can just click down here to find it, but it looks like this right here. We're going to pick that up. We're just going to click and drag kind of like this. Do you see we've changed where the gradient goes? Now I forgot I should not have changed that gradient. I should not have closed the gradient panel. So let's click and open it back up. We need to make a few changes on this. So we're going to do the field. Right here it says it's at 100%. We're actually going to make that 45. And what it just did, do you see that it made it was a circle? It now made it, more elongated so that it'll fit in there better. That looks pretty good. So we are done with that part of it. Let's go back and get our selection tool and select this summit map, let's select this box that's down here on the legend part of it. I'm going to Alt scroll to get a little bit closer so I can see what I'm doing. Space bar and move it up. Okay, so on this one, we need to click up here on the strokes. We've got this selected. We're going to click on the stroke and we're going to add the Ice Linear. And so we put that gradient on the box instead of just a solid color. So now we need to go back and open up the gradient panel. Now, right now, it's not showing us anything because it thinks we're talking about the fill, and the fill does not have a gradient on it. So when we click on stroke, you can see it's got all of our choices that we made for that first linear. And all of this is fine, except for we're going to click this middle button, and it's going to apply the gradient along the stroke instead of along like the whole thing. So when you click it, you see how it changed. It's definitely different. Now go ahead and try the second box, the last box, which is apply gradient across the stroke. That looks completely different, and that looks better on a stroke. So that's the one we are going to choose. Now we're going to go choose the width tool, and it is this one right here. So go ahead and click on the width tool. And you should have your smart guides on. If you're not seeing these little pink things show up, of course, you can go to view and make sure your smart guides are on, but they're probably still on from the last time you used them. We're going to go to the upper left-hand corner of the legend box. And like I said, if you need to zoom in, just alt scroll so you can see what you're doing. Hover over it until you see the word anchor. And then you're going to click and drag away from the point until you see it say about 0.28 inches. You see down there in the width it says 0.28 inches? Perfect. Let go. And you see how that's completely changed? So the width tool takes a stroke that was all solid and it changes the way that it deals with things. So you can really make things look, cool and different. Now with the same width tool, you're going to put it over the top of the logo until it says intersect, meaning that it's intersecting with the middle of that. That's pretty good. There you go, intersect. And you're going to click and drag down until it says 0.08. Let's see. You don't have to get this exactly because we can change it later. That's good. 0.81 is going to work. All right, we're going to add one more in the middle section. Click and drag up until it's about 1 inch. I'm at 1.07. That's okay. So now we can make these perfect. So if you double click on that little point in the middle, we're still in the width tool. It's going to pop up the width edit tool. And this is where we can actually type in, because I didn't get it exactly. All right, we're going to make sure that these are joined together. And we're going to make this 0.04 inches. And it made it a little bit smaller. We're now going to pick it up and move it about 2/3 the way across. I put it right before it says lift access. You can see it's really made a cool little move for us of that swooping down. Okay, now let's go change this one in the middle. Just double click with the width tool and get the little width thing back up. And we need to make side 2. So we want this one to be not linked together. So unlink that. We're just going to change side 2, meaning the part that's beneath it. So side 2, we're going to do 0.07. And hit OK. Mine didn't change that much because I was pretty close. So we're done with that part. Let's say Control S to save. So we're moving on to making a pattern. So I'm going to hit my space bar and kind of move down a little bit so I can see better where we're at. I'm going to close my gradient tool and open back up my swatches tool. And you wouldn't think this is important, but it kind of is. Go up to view and say fit artboard to window. So we're going to click just on that little, snowflake, pick it up and drag it and drop it in your swatches. And you see it says new pattern swatch. We're going to name that snowflake. Hit enter. So we have a pattern swatch on snowflake. So if you double click right here on the actual thumbnail, it's going to open up our pattern options. So this is showing us what it would look like if we were to take this snowflake and turn it into a pattern, which is exactly what we're doing. So we're going to go over here, and this is the different choices that we have. First off, I am going to make sure those are linked, and I'm going to change the size of this. We need it to be 0.5 inches. You can see it changed it a little bit. Now, the last thing, another thing we want to do is right now it's in grid, but we have a bunch of choices. We could do it in little circles, hexagon. The book wants us to do brick by row. Then we're going to change it from 1/2. You can see it's changing. It's going about halfway each time. We're going to change it to 1/3. That's a completely different pattern than what we started with. So we've now defined our pattern. We're going to say done. Now you don't really see anything right now, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and click on that snowflake, and you can just delete it. I'm just going to show you really quickly kind of what it has done. If I were to grab a rectangle and fill this in with our pattern instead of a solid, it would now make a rectangle filled with that pattern. We're not doing that. I was just kind of showing you what the pattern does. Okay, so let's continue on with the book. We need to grab the rectangle tool, and we're going to go ahead and make a black stroke, and we're going to have the fill be our snowflake pattern. And we're going to draw a box that fills the entire screen. So you see that when I click right here, it says intersect. That means I'm getting the very top of the screen. And I'm going to go down to the bottom until it says intersect, and I'm going to let go. So we have an entire screen full of this wonderful pattern that we've made. Now we need to go up, while this is still selected, we need to go up and make sure that this is a 6-point black stroke. So if I go over here to my layers menu, which should be right here in the Essentials Classic, and I kind of open this layer up, let's make this bigger so I can see. You can see all the things that we've done in it, and here is the rectangle that we just made that is the background. We're going to click it up, click on it by the little icon and drag it down to the bottom. So now it's behind everything. All right, so make sure you're in the selection tool and just click anywhere off the artboard to make sure nothing is selected. So now we need to go back and let's change that pattern, and you will see that it's going to actually change it on here. So go back to your swatches and double click on that pattern. So now we need to make sure that it knows we want to change our original little snowflake. So just click once on that, and you can see that that is telling us, so that's telling us we have the actual little part that we started this whole icon selected. So in your properties, you can see it's telling us that that is filled with that basic blue. Right here, it's saying it's at 100% opacity. We actually want to turn that down to 25. So you can just type 25 in and hit enter. And it's dimmed the whole pattern because we dimmed that one thing, and everything is based on that one thing. So if we say done, you can see that it has now dimmed this pattern to 25. Now we could have dimmed this entire layer, but the problem with that is it then would have actually dimmed our stroke. We just wanted to dim what was on the inside. So we have adjusted the pattern. Even after you've added it to something, you can still adjust it, and it will change everything that that pattern is in. And now we've made that. Let's be organized here. We're going to deselect everything, make a new layer, and call it background. And let's move that to the bottom. And then go find that pattern we just made. There it is. It says rectangle. And we're going to drop that in the background layer. Okay, let's save again because we're going to start making brushes. So Control S. First off, let's look at the brushes window. It is right here. And make sure it's kind of open all the way. So these are kind of the default brushes that come with it. Let's go ahead and clean this up like we did in swatches. So click right here in the hamburger menu, say select all unused, and click the trash can. Yes, we want to delete all of those. So all we've got so far is just your basic linear brush. So let's open up the layers panel, and we're going to make a new layer. So just click once on the word legend to make sure we're at the top, and then click this little plus sign at the bottom to create a new layer. We are going to name this layer Ski Lift. All right, so now go down and we need to find the ski lift. It is these things that look like the little T. So click on the first one and then shift and click on the second one. Those are where the ski lift is. And you can see that it's told us that they are down here in layer 1. So if you don't have layer 1 expanded, just expand that layer 1 and you can see it's these two paths. So we're going to click one of those, shift click the other one, pick up by the word path and drag it up here to the ski lift panel, to the ski lift layer. So now those are in the ski lift layer. And if you were to turn this on and off, you can see they're now on that layer. We need to click anywhere off to deselect those and make sure we're not selected on anything. Okay, I like to kind of go off to the side. We're going to make our new brush. So space barred off to the side. So somewhere over here to the side, we're going to grab the line segment tool. And you'll see when you grab the line segment tool, immediately fill is turned off because it knows we're just making a line. And it normally defaults to be black. If not, make sure that this is a black, stroke. And we just need to draw a straight line. Now, sometimes it's hard to get it straight. So the easiest way to do it is to click shift as you're drawing and it will make it completely straight. And the book says to make it about 1 inch long. Now, it doesn't matter if it's not exactly because we can fix it. So get it about 1 inch. If you didn't get it exactly 1 inch, that's fine. Over here in properties, you can just go in and say, make that 1. And now it's perfectly 1 inch. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that. Doesn't matter what tool you're in, you can just Alt and scroll your mouse and of course, space bar to get closer. Now, before we keep going, we need to change the color of this. So while that is selected, go to color up here. Make sure that you are actually clicked on stroke. And we're going to change this from 100% black to just 75% black. So you can see it's kind of gray now. We've changed the color of it. Now we need to make sure that the stroke, while it's still selected, go up here and make sure this is a 5-point stroke. So it kind of looks like a little box. We now need to go to edit and copy. So you can say edit, copy, or you can say Control C. So now it's sitting in the copy paste buffer. Now go back to edit and say paste in front. So put an exact copy of that in front. And we don't really see anything because they're both 5 points. Right now we have the top one selected. In fact, if you look here, you can look and see, look, we have 2 lines right on top of each other. So we know that we're on the top line. We want to make this top line to 2.5. It's a little bit smaller. Once again, probably can't tell a difference. We need to change the actual color of it. So while that top one is selected, we're going to go up to color. And this one, we're going to make 30%. Now you can see that they're different. So that is our little shape that we're going to create a brush with. So now with your selection tool, just click and drag around both, which will select both of these boxes. And go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. So basically what it just did was it took those strokes and it turned them into boxes. So now we need to group those together. Go to Object, Group, or you can say Control G. So now they're together as one. If we go over into the Layers panel, we can see that it has created a group for us that's got all of those things together. So now we need to open the Brushes panel. The Brushes panel is right here. We're going to select that group that we had, and we're going to pick it up and drag it into the brushes. It's going to ask us what type of brush we want to make. Just click Art Brush, and then hit OK. This is going to pop up. Let's call this Ski Lift. And hit OK. We now can delete this because we don't need it anymore. So just delete it, and let's go ahead and save. Control S, and let's keep going. So now let's go back to the middle. I'm going to double click right here and double click right here, and that will kind of put everything back in the center for us. And we're going to get the selection tool and grab that path, shift that path, because those are our ski lifts. And then we are just going to click on that once, and you can see that it has added that stroke to the ski lift. Pretty cool. Now that we've put it there, we're actually going to change the brush, and you will see that it will change even though it's already there. So double click on our brush. And we're going to change this right here, make sure it says fixed, and we're going to change it to 200. And hit OK. It's going to ask us, do you want us to apply it to stuff you've already done? Or do you want it to just be on everything new? We're going to say, yes, apply it to what we've already done. And you can see now they're a lot thicker. All right, so let's select those. Select the first one, Shift, select the second one, go up to View and say Hide Bounding Box. So you can see it's showing us there's 2 lines here that have a stroke on it. But we want to kind of change this. So now that we have both of those selected, we're going to say Object, Expand Appearance. And it kind of did the same thing that we just did a second ago, making that into shapes instead of into lines. So these are all grouped together. If we kind of look at them, you can see that the first one is grouped together and the second one is grouped together. So that is grouped together as one, this is grouped together as one. So we need to click on the first one, and we're going to right click and say Ungroup. You can also go up to Object, Ungroup. And you can see right here, they are no longer grouped together. Click on the second one, right click and say Ungroup. So we now just have all 4, they're separated. So choose just the middle of the first one. So let's say we had a whole bunch of these all over the place. It would take you forever to sit there and select each one that is in this light gray. So there's an easy way to do it. If you go up to Select, Same Fill Color, it's going to select everything on here that has this select, which is a cool thing. You can, there's only 2 things to select right now, but if we had a whole bunch, that would really, really help us. Now we need to go something that's called the Pathfinder tool. So I don't think it's open yet. Let's go find it. Window, Pathfinder. Okay, it's right here. We're going to be using that a few times, so we should go ahead and dock it. So pick up this whole thing here, and let's drag it down and drop it right here. So this is the Pathfinder tool. And what it does is it's going to do different things. Do you want to unite them together? Do you want to minus the front from the back? Of these 2 things that are selected, it's kind of asking us what we want to do. We're going to click on the Unite button, which is the first 2. And if you watch it while it happens, you see it united those 2 things together. Now, they're now one shape. If we go back and look, there's just one shape, which is that together. So now let's try that tool that we used a second ago to select the darker gray. So let's select the darker gray, which is the back one, and that was Select, Same Fill Color. And we're going to do the same thing again with the Unite. So go down to the Pathfinder and click this first one right here, and it has joined them together. Now you may have noticed, here I'm going to back up just to show you. You may have noticed that here in Properties, the beginning of the Pathfinder does show up for you, and you can click right here to see the Pathfinder. So if ever you lose it, I tend to lose the Pathfinder. It's right here, and you will end up using that a lot if you get into Illustrator. So I'm going to do it again. I was just showing you that you can find 2 places to do that. Okay, so we've got that the way we need it. Let's go back to Layers and make sure you're on the top one and click Create New Layer. This layer is going to be called Ski Runs. Let's go find the ski runs are these little things, like that's where the people go down the ski lift. So we're going to click on the word path for the first black path. Control, click on all of the ones that say path. And we're going to pick these up and drag and drop them into the ski runs area. So now let's lock all the other ones. Just click lock and drag down. And we're going to turn off everything. So just click the eyeballs and drag all the way down. So now all we see is the ski runs, and we need to click on ski runs. That's all we're going to be working with right now. Okay, so make sure nothing is selected because we're going to make a new brush. All right, so I'm just going to go up to the side for a second, and we're going to grab the rectangle tool, and we're going to make sure it has a black fill. So you can Best way to do that is to click right here and say black. And we want no stroke, so click stroke and say none right here. With the rectangle tool, just click once. It's going to pop up, and we need this to be a 0.4 inch square. 0.4. And it's going to draw us a 0.4 inch square. Now we need to rotate this. So let's get out of the rectangle tool and the selection tool, make sure it's selected, and we need to go to the transform tool. Now the transform tool should be down here where we docked it before. If you can't find it, go to Window, Transform. And it's got all the ways we can change it, the width and the height and all of that. We're going to go right here to the rotate and type in 45. So it's going to rotate it to a 45-degree angle. Perfect. Now while that's still active, and we're still in the selection tool. While this is still selected, we're going to go over here to the width and height and make sure it's unlinked because we're just going to be changing the height. We need to change the height to 0.35. And you can see that it is the bounding box, the actual shape was bigger, but we changed it. So that looks great. Making sure that you have the selection tool, you're going to click Alt, click and drag to the right, so we now have 2. Okay, now that we have that, we need to reset that bounding box because it's a little weird. So go to Object, Transform, Reset Bounding Box. So it's going to make the bounding box the right size. So we're going to select off of that and go get the Line Segment tool and make sure it's black stroke. And we're just going to hover over it until we know it's on the center. Shift and drag straight down to make a little line. Now select all of those by clicking and dragging your mouse and go back to Pathfinder. And this time we're going to do this one down here at the middle that's called Divide. And it's divided those into 2 separate little things. So now let's go and make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to go back up here to Transform and make sure that these are selected together. And we need to make this bigger by percentage. Just because it says inches does not mean that we can't type in what percent. So instead of inches, type in 140%. And it's made it 140% bigger than it was. Go ahead and move it over a little bit now. And we need to right click on this and say Object Ungroup. Now there are 2 separate things. Go ahead and save, and let's keep going. Now we're going to make a new brush with this, but before we do this, we need to make them into swatches. So you remember the swatches panel was right here. We're going to take this first one and drag it over into the swatch. Name this Run Start. Now we're going to grab this one, drag it over, and we're going to call this Run End. Now, this might happen to you. If you see this looking strange, what has happened is it took this pattern and it filled it with that pattern. So if that happened to you, we just need to make sure it's black. Just go back and the last one we need to make is this one right here. We're going to right click, pull it over here, and call this Run Path. Now, we don't really need these anymore, so you can delete them. And let's go back to the center, double click here, double click here. So we've got all these ready to go. Now, right now it's showing us everything. We can click right here and say, just show me the pattern swatches. So that might make it a little bit easier. Notice we have the first pattern we made, and now we have these. So that's all we're going to use on this. You now need to open up the brushes panel, and we're going to make a new brush. So just click right here for the plus, and we need to make a pattern brush. Okay. And we're going to call this Ski Runs. So right here, how do we want it to start? So let's click on that and go down and find. This is how it starts. This one is for the end tile. So let's click on it and say, this is how it ends. And then here it wants to know, what do you want it to be in the middle slide tile? That would be the run path. So you see kind of how this is working. So it's how do we want this to be? We've got that right. So make sure yours looks like this and hit OK. And you'll see we have a new brush over here. So now we're going to select all of these with our selection tool. And we're just going to click once on that brush. And it has added it to it. So they look a little strange. Let's go change how big they are. Up here in stroke, while they're still selected, we're going to click and you can choose 0.5. So they're a little thinner. That looks good. And the last thing we need to do is, if you remember, they had color, but we don't see that through this brush because it's the way the brush was created. So let's change this brush a little bit. Double click on the actual brush in your brushes menu. And down here where it says colorization, it says none right now. Let's say tints. And once we do that, the original, yes, we need to apply it to the strokes. And now the original colors will come through because we allowed that brush to have tints. That looks a lot better. All right, so we've got that part. Let's go ahead and save, Control S. Now the book now goes into how you can save a brush set. I'm not going to actually require you to turn that in, but if you wanted to do this, if we wanted to save this brush set, we could just go down here and save this brush library, and then we would be able to load it just by saying open brush library, and then we could go and open it again. So if you'd like to know how to do that, you can look in the book. I'm not going to require you to turn that in. So let's just keep going with the next part. So the next thing we need to do is put symbols on here. So the symbols library should be right here between brushes and your swatches. And these are the little preset symbols that come with Illustrator. There are a bunch more. If you click on the little hamburger menu, you can see there are a bunch of different, here we'll just kind of look at one, nature. There's a bunch of these little symbols that you can use. The book has actually given us a group of symbols, and that was that second file that was in your files that came from the book. So click on the hamburger menu and say Open Symbol Library, and go all the way down to the bottom where it says Other Library. And we're going to go find it from our book files that we had downloaded earlier. Right here, Map Symbols. Go ahead and open that. And you can see here they are. It has given us some little symbols. But before we start using it, let's kind of pull it over to the side and let's make a new layer that we can put these on. So I would go ahead and lock everything, and let's make a new layer. And we're going to call this Signs. And go ahead and pick up that first one that looks like a sign and drag it and put it onto the screen. So let's go to Transform and make sure it's locked. And we're going to make this 1 inch. Let's go ahead and put this up here. And then we need to make 4 more instances of where this is on the screen. So we need to make 4 of these total. So click on the first one, Alt drag, and just put them kind of up at the top. We can move them more later if we want. Alt drag. So kind of like that.
So let's zoom on to this top one up here. And we need to get inside this actual symbol. So double click on the symbol and it's going to say this, just say OK. We're now inside this instance of this one symbol. So we need to change it. Back in your symbols library, grab the one that looks like a little cloud, or it's called Snowdrift, and drag it and put it on there, and you can kind of make it the way you like. We're now going to go get the Type tool and just click anywhere in here. And we need to type Snow Surf slope. So select all of those, and we need to change it to a white fill. So you can either do it right here in the Properties panel is a good place. And we need to change it to the fonts that you had loaded earlier. So you can click here, and we're going to say ATC Garnet Ultra. We're going to make it 23 points. And the leading right here, which is the space between the two lines of text, we're going to make that 21. We're going to make it 21. And we're going to click right here in Paragraph, and we're going to center it. And we'll just kind of make it, all right, that looks nice and pretty. Now let's get out of this. Just click this back button a couple times, and you'll see that it's changed our symbol. Unfortunately, it changed all 4 of them, but we can fix that.
So how do we change them all separately? I'm going to click that one, Shift, Shift, Shift. So they're all there together. And up here on the top, we are going to break the link. So they now are not associated with that symbol in the Symbols library anymore. We can go and rename each of them. So the black one is going to be called Midnight Hill. So we can just double click. Night Hill. Pink Run is called Bunny Hollow. And the blue one, Ripper Peak. Okay, grab the selection tool and select away. Okay, so we're done with those. So let's lock the signs layer, and you can go ahead and close that. And we need to turn on the one called text so we can see that. Move this over. And we need to make a new layer. So go up to the top layer and then hit the plus. This layer is going to be called Amenities. And everything else is locked, so we make sure that we are doing all of this on the Amenities layer. Now we need to go replace these different things with what it should say. So lift access, just pick it up and drag it where it says lift access, and that's about where it goes. Here's another lift access. Sledding would go right here. There's another lift access. Okay, just kind of line them up like that. We now can turn off the text layer. And that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and save. All right, we're done with amenities. You can lock that, and let's turn on and unlock legend. So we're going to go down to the legend area. Okay, for this, we're going to put all the little icons next to what they are here. So just go ahead and add all these in. Now that looks good, but they're all over the place. So we, of course, could use our smart guides, or we could use a line that we've used before. I'm going to use a line. I'm going to select them all, and then just go over here and say, center them all. Okay, and go over to these. We need to click on one, shift, and grab all of these. Now, if you're not seeing the bounding box around all of them, it might be because you turned it off. So go back to view bounding box if you don't see these little things. But we're going to pick them up and drag it until we're at about 1.15 on the width. 1.15. There you go. And we're going to go and use that brush we made. So go back to your brushes and just click once. That's way, way too big. So let's choose 0.5. Looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and save. Control S. And we're done with the symbols if you want to close those. Let's look back at our layers. And if we kind of turn all this on, you can see we're getting there. So we need to make a new layer at the top, and we're going to call this forest. And turn your original layer 1 back on, and let's unlock it. And you see those group of trees. Everything's unlocked. So let's select that group of trees and open up symbols. And with trees selected, well, we're just going to pick up trees and drag and drop it onto symbols. And it's making a new symbol. Let's call this trees. And it needs to be a movie clip. It needs to be a static symbol with the registration of center, which is fine. That needs to be right there in the center, and hit OK. So we've now made a new little symbol because we're going to draw a whole bunch of these. So we could just start dragging these over here to make the forest, but let's use the symbol sprayer. So the symbol sprayer looks like this little can right here. So go get the symbol sprayer. And we're going to double click on it so we can change some things before we start drawing. We're going to make the diameter of this 1.5 inches. And the symbol density is 5. The rest of this is fine, and hit OK. Now, when you hover over, you will see your little spray can, and that's the circle of how big these trees are going to be. So just kind of click up here at the top and drag down, and it's making us a bunch of trees. You can click and drag some more. There we go. It's going to look different for everybody, so just go ahead and draw some trees. Click Control just for a second, and you'll get your selection tool. Click away from that, then let go of your selection tool, and you have the symbol sprayer again. Now we need to do this stuff over here, so just draw some of these trees over here. I don't like the way I did that. I'm going to do it this way. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's get the selection tool and click off of it. It's there, but it's looking kind of bad. Some things are kind of covered up. So go over here, click and hold, and you'll see that there is a symbol shifter tool. So we can kind of use that. You see those little lines? It's going to tell us we can kind of shift things around. So we can move them so that they're not on top of stuff. That's looking better. This one needs to move over some. Now I need to select this one. Control, select this one. Let go. Now we're back on the symbol shifter tool. Okay, and get that the way you like it. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's save and we'll keep going. All right, we are almost done. So the only problem with this is all this stuff is outside of our map, and that looks kind of messy. So let's fix that. We're going to be using a clipping mask. So let me just show you what the clipping mask does for a second, and then we'll come back to this. So I'm just going to make a new one just so I don't mess that up. And I'm just going to draw a bunch of stuff here. Let's see. I'll draw some circles. And then let's change the color of these. Okay, so let's say we have all of this. I'm going to take my stroke off just because I want to. But it looks really cool here, but I need to get rid of all of that. If I make another box, and it doesn't matter what color it is, say it's just like this, and then I select all of them, I can say Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and it's going to use the top layer to clip out everything else. That is what a clipping mask is. That looks pretty cool right there. In fact, I could even expand that and make a cool pattern out of it. So that's what we need to do with our first one. So let's go back to it. We're going to be making a clipping mask. All right, so let's go back over to the layers panel and kind of clean things up. Unlock everything, make everything visible. We don't actually need the text layer anymore, so I'm going to click on that and delete that. This one that's called layer 1, we need to call it Lodge. And we take the one that's called Legend and drag it to the very top. Legend is this stuff down here that we made. Now make sure nothing is selected, so just click anywhere off of it and make sure you don't have anything selected here. We're going to click the word forest, Control, click the word background, and go up and say collect in new layer. And this layer we're going to call clipped forest. Go ahead and open that up, and you'll see we have the forest and then we have the background. Okay, just pick up background and put it above forest. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that box that we made to do the clipping mask like I just did. So if we click on the, click right here to select all of them, and then we're going to say Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Now it clipped it, but unfortunately it took away our pattern. So let's open up this this is our clipping mask. Open this up until we find the rectangle. There is the rectangle. So select just the rectangle. And we're going to go back up and say we want it to have our pattern in it, which was snowflake. And it's going to put the snowflake back. Pretty cool. And the very last thing we need to do is put the black stroke back. So black, 6 points. Guess what? We're not done. This is looking pretty good. I do see one problem is that our pattern is on top of all these things. So let's pick up the one called Clipped Forest and move it to the very bottom of the stack. Ta-da! We are finally done. That looks so much better than what we started. Okay, so that took us a while. Hopefully we worked together and it looks pretty good to me. If you have a problem saving this, we're going to, of course, save it again. I do want your AI file. We've had a few little problems with it, with Macintoshes, but it should be fine. If you do have a Macintosh and it causes a problem, try saving it as a PDF. So when you say save as, choose PDF, and it will probably work fine on the Macintoshes. I don't know why that's been causing a problem. Contact me if it does cause a problem. Otherwise, I will see you next time.